It's important for them to understand engineering communications, organize construction processes, know everything about technical units, composition, color, have good taste, and of course be able to recognize all the customers' wishes. In the next episode of Colors of Asia, we will talk about professionals who are engaged in interior design. You're watching a new episode of Colors of Asia. Hello, I'm Gabdira Shidbotbaev. Today we decided to introduce you to professionals who, due to specificity of their profession, give us a good mood because they know how to create a comfortable environment. These are professionals who are engaged in interior design. These are representatives of different professions, each of them has its own duties. For example, the work of a designer overlaps with the work of an architect. If an architect designs houses, then a designer does the interior. This work is really interesting and exciting, and you will see it right now. I give the floor to our correspondents from Bishkek and Baku. They will introduce you to interior designers who have kindly shared the secrets of their profession. For every person today, it's important to have a personal space, the very safe haven where he can be himself, relax and feel comfortable. And of course, many of us often turn to interior designers who can help create the desired atmosphere. The hero of this story is Murat Abdurrahimov from Bishkek. For more than 15 years, he has been creating masterpieces in the field of interior design. People had other hopes for Murat, but by the will of fate, everything in his life happened in a completely different way. His parents were sure that their son would become a famous surgeon, but he surprised everyone when he applied to the Kyrgyz State University of Construction, Transport and Architecture at the Faculty of Architectural Design.
У меня родители, получается, медики, военные медики. Я хотел изначально быть медиком, хирургом, хотел делать операции.
My parents are military doctors, and I wanted to be a surgeon first. I wanted to do the surgery, but since childhood I have been good at drawing. Apparently someone in our family drew well. Yes, it turned out that I have skills or talent. Most likely skills. And I tried to go to the university. Once I entered the university, I realized that I found my place, that architecture and design are very interesting professions. When you do even one project, when you put everything into production, you communicate with a large number of people and you learn a lot. And every new order and every new customer bring their own story to life.
И каждый заказ новый, каждый новый заказчик – это своя история жизни.
Having received knowledge at the university, Murat became one of the young specialists. Then he was required to prove in practice that he made the right choice and could take place as a creative person. To do this, he got a job in one of the design studios in Bishkek, where he received the first order. Well, then the profession became more and more interesting, exciting, and just a few years later, he was already taking up the design of large shopping centers and restaurants.
Первый проект – это была маленькая кухня.
The first project was a small kitchen in classic style. It was a very difficult and very serious project for me. There was nothing complicated but knowledge of ergonomics, perfect knowledge of design. It was a challenge. The first projects are always hard. Then, having gained experience, the work becomes more easy.
Первые проекты, они всегда даются тяжело. Потом, наработав опыт, уже более-менее легче все это дается.
According to Murat Abdurrahimov, the task of any interior designer is to make a room convenient, functional, and beautiful. He creates and implements the concept, and the result of his work can be a cozy apartment, a comfortable office, a stylish restaurant, or a cafe, an impressive hall of a large building with its beauty and comfort, and much more. This is an interesting, creative, and fashionable profession. It is chosen by people who value aesthetics and want to transform space beyond recognition. But any activity has its own nuances and difficulties, and you can't make it without them, especially when it comes to customers. You need to be able to understand their desires, requirements, and mood.
Изначально было трудно понять, чего хотят. В любом случае, опыт – это наработанный опыт, да? Сейчас как-то это уже подсознательно, что ли, все делаю.
Initially, it was difficult to understand what they wanted. Well, in any case, experience helps, and now it's done on some subconscious level. We understand each other almost at one glance. We first take the terms of reference, make an approximate selection, we make references, we discuss every moment, every picture, every color.
На объекте. Мы замеряем по факту объект.
The first meeting usually takes place at our facility. We measure the object in fact. Then the second meeting takes place at our office. When we meet, we discuss customer preferences. We also need to learn what family members do, what do children do, for example, what are their interests, sports, music, what are the hobbies of the couple or every family member.
Вот увлечение каждого члена семьи получается. Естественно, супруга и супруги.
From our conversation with Marat, we learned that the speed of creating any design depends on the volume of work, the area of the room, and some specific requirements of the customer. On average, specialists are engaged in working on a drawing for about a month, but the most difficult thing in their work is to find an idea. Eight years ago, Marat opened his design studio. During this time, he performed hundreds of works for private houses, apartments, restaurants, hotels, and shopping centers. Ethnic design works that he has in his portfolio are his special pride. This is one of the strongest aspects of his creative activity. But in any Kyrgyz house, there must be a room with a national color, and it's usually designed to receive guests.
Когда заказывают проект, в любом случае одну комнату мы делаем в этностиле. Ну, так принято. Это
When I receive order, I always make one room in the ethnic style. Well, this is a common thing. The room has elements of ethnic style. We have a yurt mainly. We're nomadic people from ancient times. The room has elements of the yurt, elements of the toshok, and national patterns. All this is a national color, and we're trying to move it to a certain room. Bell, chest, and kirige. Well, mostly such ethnic style elements.
В основном вот через такие моменты, элементы этностиля.
Marat Abdrahimov is often invited to film productions as a landscape designer. So for one historical picture, he together with his team created a kind of ethno-town. We must admit that this is a completely different direction, another profession, a different specificity. But our hero copes with it very successfully because he has knowledge, great experience, talent, and a desire to constantly learn something new, interesting, and beautiful. Interior design nowadays is not only about taste, this is a complex combination of ideas as well as financial opportunities for their implementation. If we want to give a special look to our apartment, then we probably won't manage to do it on our own, because there are many styles and approaches that emphasize various philosophical categories. Modern experts say that interior design is increasingly moving towards simplicity. For example, Asef Bakhshiyev from Baku is convinced that unlike complex elements, simple forms can express more details. And this, in his opinion, is the future in the field of interior design.
Bizdə evdə həmişə bütün uşaqlığımdan bəri personal kompüterlər olub.
I got interested in this profession after I began to study computer graphics. I was more fascinated with design softwares. Thankfully, there was always a computer with me. In general, I have had a great interest in drawing, geometry, art since childhood. But after graduating from Polytechnic University, I made the final choice in favor of interior design. And in 2010, I had my own blog where I shared information about design, posted my ideas. Previously, there was little information on this on the internet. At the same time, I carried out small orders. And in 2011, I received my first major order. It was necessary to perform the design in the classical style, which was then extremely popular. Although I didn't like this style, this work helped me to get to know it better.
İnterior üçün 3D proqramları təcrübəmi başladım bölüşməyə. Həm də belə isə dizayn üslubu yox, konsept yaratmaq tərəfə yönəlir. Artıq insanlar düşünür.
I think at present it's not enough to deal only with theory. Yes, you can work in a specific direction, for example, in the classical or loft style. But today's requirements are aimed at making the design conceptual. People think, why should the interior be only in classical or in some other style? If the customer is familiar with it, he has a wide outlook, then he may want to see elements of various directions. And you begin to understand that every order for you is something fundamentally new. And it becomes important to do this job so that this new thing becomes a reality for you and a good experience. Of course, you can mix everything randomly, because it can ruin everything.
Sizin üçün yeni bir üslubdur. Siz bir var ki, məsələn, insanın şəxsi dəstək xəttini olma, bu da başqa bir məsələdir. Bu işdə istənilən halda bir belə deyək ki, bir qanun.
In this business, it is essential to remember about harmony. Using a conceptual approach, any visitor of a particular house can form the first impression of its inhabitants. The same principle works in public places, although sometimes the interior design there is selected according to existing fashion trends. Now, in Azerbaijan, the loft style is really popular. But you need to understand that such trends are short-lived. They don't stay for too long and are easily forgotten. Therefore, when doing interior design, it's important to calculate everything a few steps ahead. It should emphasize your personality, character, your philosophy.
Bir bulut kimi nəysə təsəvvür edirlər. Bu Joly yaşayış evlərində də.
For example, a restaurant or a store where they sell a certain category of goods seek to make their own interior so that people feel comfortable and they gave the impression that this is their home. The brand sort of visualizes its attitude towards visitors. And here it all depends on what a company wants to tell a consumer about its philosophy. And based on this, a design concept is created.
10 il bundan qabaq yaradılmış hansısa konsept, o konsept üstündən geçir. Trend loft. Ona görə, yəni loftla bağlı istənilən dizayn.
I say it again that now in Azerbaijan, many people are fascinated with the loft style. It can even be said that it is the hottest trend. And this can be dangerous because trends can change sharply. 10 years ago, no one would have thought of using an unplastered brick wall in their apartment or in a public place. I am sure that in 2 or 3 years, this style will become outdated. Therefore, now you should not use the loft style. And the forecast for the future is such that the interior design will move towards simplicity. The simpler, the better. Classics will always be used, but it's important to combine it with something.
3000-ci ilə aid yaşayış mənzilləri göstərmək istəsəz,
I don't work in any particular style, but I love Art Deco, because with every element it emphasizes splendor and comfort. Simple geometric shapes, shiny materials, rich patterns demonstrate splendor. If you want, for example, to show the interior of the year 3000 in the film, then everything will be so simple that no one will notice even the furniture. And I'm sure that the Art Deco style will be used for this.
o bina Art Deco stilində olacaq.
There is an opinion that the customer is always right. This is not always the case in our industry. The customer is not always right and is often mistaken. There are people who can clearly explain what they want, and there are those that can only present the desired picture. But they don't have to draw anything because there is only one thing I need. I need them to tell me about themselves, about their worldview and personality. This will be the basis of the concept.
Tam görə bilmirlər. Bəyənmir. Fikirləşir ki, yəni niyə görə belə olmadı? Çünki belə istəyir.
Each style, whether it is constructivism or classics, has its own laws. You can immediately understand what it's all about, and if you come up with something new, then this of course can surprise anyone. Nowadays, you need to be able to go beyond certain limits, you need to look positively and accept innovations, so you can not only design the interior, but also express some idea.
Siz oradakı detalları, oradakı izminkanı hiss edirsiniz.
Working with any interior is the prerogative of not only designers. There are a number of other professions in this area, and all of them are certainly important. As a rule, the designer negotiates with the customer, takes measurements of the premises, prepares the whole project, thinks over the layout and engineering drawings. But the decorator is the very person that any designer can hardly do without. And I must say that professional decorators have always been especially appreciated because many of them are true artists. Yuri Zhigunov and Salima Shergaliyeva are not only a strong couple, they are also a wonderful creative tandem of two people who represent one of the rare professions in Kazakhstan – decorators. We came into the profession partly by accident. I mean, we were artists. And in a way, designers and customers lured us into interior design because we did some projects and we were always asked why we don't do this or that. And slowly we had to do something along the way. And I realized that the market itself is very popular and the niche is absolutely free. The fact that we are artists helps us a lot because we see the color correctly, we know the proportions, we know the loss of perspective and everything else. Now there is an abundance of materials and we want to try everything and we can demonstrate our skills in other materials. And here are the questions. What are the functional duties of the decorator? What qualities do you need to have to be in this profession?
Когда архитектор с дизайнером отработали, вот здесь наступает как бы работа декоратора.
When the architect and the designer completed their part, decorator starts his own part of work. The decorator works directly with the final layer. We complete walls and furniture, we set color and texture. We serve as tailors or masters for the final layer, for the whole image.
Для заключительного слоя, для картинки.
And if you compare it with human anatomy, architecture is a skeleton, design is muscles, and decoration is skin.
Мы именно разрабатываем вот эти покрытия, то есть мы должны понимать, что такое фактура.
When developing these coatings, we must understand what texture is, that it is divided into glossy and matte. We must understand how to combine these textures, colors, no color vision, and the physics of obtaining some kind of color. We must understand narrow problems that the designer not necessarily knows. We need to know how the main coloring system works. Up to the point that we must have some technical knowledge of programs for working with spectrophotometers, the ability to work with quite complex instruments, and understand the mathematical formula of color.
Понимать математическую формулу цвета.
И очень многие думают, что это такая.
Many people think that this is such an easy, beautiful profession, but this, like any other profession, requires strength, knowledge, and time. Sometimes it's even physically difficult.
И иногда это даже просто физически трудно.
У нас очень много собственных наработок.
We have a lot of our own developments. Of course, we ourselves learn a lot, use someone's ideas. But no one can do without it, I think. But we still offer a lot of exclusive things. We often create new surfaces for individual interiors.
Новые поверхности.
And to make sure, let's look into Yuri and Salima's studio, where they spent most of their time. Each centimeter of the space is filled with the works of our heroes. Wall, ceiling, floor coverings, and individual objects. Here you can carefully see, touch, get information, see how it was used in practice, and even see the quality and strength of materials.
Когда мы приобрели вот эти стулья, нам захотелось какой-то интересный стол.
When we purchased these chairs, we wanted to buy an unusual table. We bought it at the junk market. An old Soviet varnish table, which we first completely prepared and then made an imitation of the veneered surface in the marquetry technique. None of these pieces are real wood. It's an imitation.
Один из этих кусочков это не настоящее дерево, это имитация.
And our work of decorators is just to simulate any material. Sometimes I say that we are the biggest deceivers because we can make bricks, marble, wood, fabric in different techniques.
И мрамор, и дерево, и ткань, и много-много других техник. Каждая стена у нас посвящена какой-то теме, и это зонированные такие участки, и в разных местах вы можете...
Each wall is dedicated to a certain topic. These are zoned areas, and in different places, you can look at several samples on the same topic at once, but in different versions.
Они вот совершенно разные.
For example, here are these voluminous wallpapers, which we only decorate. Look, they're completely different. They can be made in different textures and techniques. This stands on the floor, and on the walls are various imitations of fabrics, stone, metal, and leather. You can remove any of these patterns from the wall and look closer. For example, this is an imitation of snake skin, which even with close consideration seems real.
Вот это вот имитация змеиной кожи, которая даже при близком рассмотрении кажется настоящей. Вот эту секцию я особенно люблю, потому что...
I especially love this section because I'm an artist, and we have samples with art paintings, with some small reliefs, and you can get anything. You can see it and touch it.
Достать, посмотреть, потрогать. Вот здесь как раз у нас стоят такие красивые, с азиатским таким.
We have such beautiful samples made in Asian style. They're in great demand now. These are stencil machines. It's shining like gold. Look at this beauty. And this is inherent in our region.
Это очень присуще нашему региону. Например, вот это покрытие мы имитировали.
Here, for example, this coating imitates a mosaic from some Italian cathedral. It even feels like a mosaic when you touch it. In fact, this is a very strong coating that we used in bathrooms. It can be used on the floor.
В ванных комнатах, которые можно делать на полу. Но я очень люблю еще работать с зеркалами.
I really like working with mirrors. These are handmade mirrors made in the technique of iglomise. Although a special offset seal is used here. This is, for example, a painting by the famous Qazaq artist Joly Ospanula, from whom we buy copyrights for his works.
Вот такие вот, они, можно сказать, арт-объекты.
According to Yuri and Salima, over the years they have learned to understand each other perfectly because they do everything together. But at the same time, each of them has their own strong skills.
Он более такой технарь, он более технически подкован, он знает, как это сделать. А я более...
He's more of a technician. He's more technically savvy. He knows how to do it. And I'm more creative. I know what to do. I have ideas. He also knows them, but it's when we work together that he's more responsible for how to do it. And I'm more responsible for what we are going to do.
Отвечает за то, как сделать, а я больше отвечаю за то, что сделать.
For clarity, our heroes offered to visit a couple of facilities where they worked as decorators. Here, for example, is a restaurant of Japanese cuisine. Entering the room, it seems that it's large, spacious, although in fact, it's far from it. The designer Yana Maligina divided the space in such a way that it was as ergonomic as possible. The interior is played on many elements on certain trifles, and it feels like you are underwater, and above you is the very surface of the sea.
За моей спиной вы видите роспись, которую мы делали.
Behind my back, you can see a painting we made. It depicts a nice Japanese man who invites guests, and this is a symbol of this restaurant.
Символом этого ресторана. Акриловыми красками. Вот.
With acrylic paints on a specially prepared wall, we made these paintings by hand.
Вручную. При этом мы...
And at the same time, we combined the colors that were presented in this interior so that it was natural, very well suited. At the same time, it was an accent wall that would attract attention and fill the space.
Заполняло пространство. Это новые весла, которые были изготовлены специально для этого ресторана, и они...
These are new paddles that were made especially for this restaurant, and they were absolutely white, clean, and new. And we used special paints that have such lasting properties, created a pattern of time. as if these paddles were very old, used for many years, and as if they were brought from the coast of the Sea of Japan, especially for this restaurant. And this restaurant used completely different textures, techniques, contrasting colors. In theory, all of this may seem completely incompatible. However, the results stunned everyone, and this place was included in the top 30 in the world.
Данный ресторан, он сделан в стиле такого
This restaurant is made in the style of industrial fusion, where there is all kinds of symbiosis of different surfaces and interesting decorative textures, and we had to solve many diverse problems. Transfer different textures in the design and create a mood. Because the restaurant, unlike the living room, has a different task, even for the decorator.
жилого, например, помещения, он даже для декоратора несет другую задачу. Мы создавали здесь как бы
We created it here in order to support wooden texture, a micro-cement technique. We got very complex, rich, saturated coating, imitating a tree. It has such a velvety, rich texture, which is emphasized by both wood, textiles, and brick. And it seems like a small volume, but it creates its own impression and atmosphere, even in such a small room.
даже вот в таком небольшом помещении создает свою атмосферу, свое впечатление. Мы смотрели серую.
We just watched a gray plaster imitating a beautiful and noble tree, and next to it, for contrast, is a plaster imitating silk. Such a rubbed surface, it seems to be aged, with an interesting glaze, metallized coating. It also gives such a smooth transition.
Дает такой плавный переход. Одно из таких ярких пятен в интерьере это служит потолок в ресторане. Тут тоже такое сочетание, то есть живописное, высококачественное постер.
One of these bright spots in the interior is the ceiling. This is a combination of picturesque, high-quality posters. They are printed and glued. There are gilded baguettes. They create solemn atmosphere and give gloss. They are made in the gilding technique. And in sharp contrast is a very matte ceiling with a light, deep gloss and such dark burgundy shades, which allows you to go further to break from gloss to matte and then go to metal. And all this unites and creates a very interesting space.
И дальше перейти к металлу. И все это вместе объединяется, создает очень интересное пространство. Ну и в данном зале тоже была как бы конструктивная особенность помещения, что ригельной конструкции и очень много колонн.
In this room, there was a kind of constructive feature of the room. There were many structures and such columns, and to make them so they looked unobtrusive, to fit them into the interior, it was decided to make a complicated move. So we decided to frame the columns, and to connect the columns themselves, green textiles, sofa upholstery, a complex technique of simulating oxidized metal was used.
Сложная техника применена, это имитация окисленного металла. Очень интересно было у нас.
And we had a very interesting work on aging mirrors. Here we also made a lot of options for decor of mirrors, and we chose this option. And it seems to me that it smoothly fit into the interior itself, and as if the very connection of this metal structures, the metal is good. The concrete surface is simulated from below. We have a brick on top, and all this connects the industrial theme, creates a single unity, and gives a smooth transition to the rest of the restaurant's interior.
К остальному интерьеру ресторана. Во время работы ты не задумываешься над сложностью воплощения задач, ты как бы стремишься ее добиться.
While working, you do not think about the complexity of implementing the task. You're trying to get it. And then it happens that in a few months, you get there and think, did we do it? How are we able to collect and implement all this? The task was superb. It seemed impossible. But we did it. And everything worked out well. And this is some kind of push that in the future help you not to be afraid to perform more difficult tasks. You know that you already have an experience like this, and you did something as complicated as this project. And this is what professional growth is.
Профессиональный рост постепенный, там какое-то мастерство.
сегодня все.
That's all for today. Watch us on Qazaq TV website and on its official YouTube channel. You have watched Colors of Asia. See you next time.
До следующей встречи в эфире.